The radio crackled to life, static hissing through the darkness, a broken, disjointed voice emerging from the void. "Can anyone hear me?" At first, I thought it was a prank. The sea, endlessly black, stretching in all directions, had a way of playing tricks on your mind. The wind howled, the waves crashed with a low, threatening roar against the platform's foundation. Alone. I was alone. Just me and the hum of machines, the creak of metal, and the constant reminder of how small I was against the ocean. The isolation was unbearable, but I had long since grown accustomed to the silence. Or so I thought. I tried to call back, but the radio was dead. No signal. No voice. Nothing. A loud thump rattled the platform beneath my feet, sharp and sudden. I froze. A sound unlike anything I'd ever heard, like something heavy had dropped from a great height and hit the steel floor below. Then, a whisper, soft and barely audible, but unmistakable. "Get out." I bolted upright. My heart pounded in my chest. The noise had come from beneath, from the belly of the platform itself. I stood at the edge of the control room window, staring out into the endless black sea, the wind whipping around me. It was dead quiet now. Nothing moved. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. The wind, fierce and biting, tore at the edges of the offshore platform, a constant reminder of how small and fragile we were out here. No land for miles, just the endless horizon of black water stretching into nothingness. I had been stationed here for what felt like an eternity, alone on this desolate rig, keeping the machines running, checking the stabilizers, watching the dark ocean from the observation deck. It was a life of monotony, and I had long since grown used to the silence. The control room buzzed with a low hum, the occasional flicker of the lights overhead adding to the sense of unease that I had come to accept. A long stretch of empty hours, punctuated by the occasional radio call, always the same routine. The world beyond this platform didn't matter. Out here, everything else faded into the mist. The work was simple, predictable. But that night, tonight, was different. I had just finished checking the power systems when the radio crackled to life, the hiss of static cutting through the stillness. I paused, my hand still resting on the control panel. There was no reason for anyone to be calling. No other rigs for hundreds of miles. No ships passing by. The isolation of the platform was absolute. And yet, the voice came through, faint at first, then clearer as it lingered. "Can anyone hear me?" It was low, strained, as though the speaker was on the verge of collapse. I couldn't make out the details, but the desperation in the voice was unmistakable. My stomach tightened. I leaned in closer to the receiver, my heart beginning to race, but the voice cut off just as quickly as it had come. I stared at the radio, waiting for the crackle to resume, for another word, another hint of life. Nothing. Just silence. I cursed under my breath and tried to adjust the dials, but there was no signal, no feedback. The platform had always been isolated, but I had never felt so alone. A sinking feeling settled in my chest. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was just the storm playing tricks on my mind. The weather had been unpredictable lately. Fog rolling in thicker than usual, the waves crashing louder than I remembered. It had unsettled me, no doubt, but I had managed to shake it off. Or so I thought. I turned away from the radio and walked toward the observation deck. The sea was calm, too calm, like a great beast lying in wait beneath the surface. The moon was hidden behind a veil of clouds, and the platform's lights cut a weak halo into the darkness around us. It was unnervingly quiet, save for the hum of machinery and the occasional creak of metal shifting in the wind. I had learned long ago that silence out here was never truly peaceful. It was unnatural. It gnawed at you slowly until you began to hear things that weren't there. Creaks that shouldn't have been there, whispers carried by the wind. But tonight that feeling was different. I stepped up to the railing, peering into the abyss. The waves below moved in slow, deliberate motion, but something felt wrong. The water had a strange stillness to it, like a surface that had been disturbed just moments ago, yet no new waves appeared. It was as though the ocean was holding its breath. That's when I heard it. A sound. A thump. I froze, every muscle in my body tensing. It came from below, from deep within the platform's foundations. A heavy, dull impact, like something had struck the underside of the rig. My heart skipped a beat. I waited for another sound, but there was only silence. I tried to rationalize it. The platform was old, and the sea was unpredictable. Perhaps it was just a loose bolt or some kind of mechanical failure. But as the silence stretched on, a chill began to creep up my spine. Something wasn't right. I had never felt this before. This deep, gnawing sense of being watched. Then another sound. Clang. This time louder. Closer. The metal reverberated through the platform, echoing in the hollow spaces of the rig. I spun on my heel, my eyes darting to the stairs that led down to the lower levels. The sound had come from there, from the very belly of the platform. I took a cautious step forward, my breath shallow. Something was moving beneath me. I rushed down the metal steps, my feet thudding against the cold, grated floor. The air grew heavier, thicker. It felt wrong. The staleness of it choked me, made it hard to breathe. My pulse quickened, and a cold sweat broke out across my forehead. The thumping had stopped, but the feeling of dread only grew stronger. I reached the bottom of the stairs, and the light flickered. A shadow moved across the far wall. I froze. There was no reason for anyone to be down here. No one else was supposed to be on this platform. But there it was. A figure just standing there in the dim light. Tall, shrouded in shadow. It didn't move, didn't speak. For a moment, I thought it was a trick of the light, my mind playing games with me. But then, I heard it. Soft, almost inaudible, a whisper that sent a shiver down my spine. Get out. The words were clear, a command. I stumbled back, my hand reaching for the railing. My breath hitched in my throat. I tried to speak, but my voice wouldn't come. My body was frozen, paralyzed with fear. The figure didn't move. It just stood there watching. And then the light went out. Everything fell into darkness. I scrambled for the nearest exit, my heartbeat pounding in my ears, the fear clawing at my throat. I couldn't stay here. I needed to leave. I didn't care what it was, I just needed to escape. But I knew, deep down, that I wasn't going anywhere. Not without facing what was waiting for me. The lights flickered back on as I stumbled into the maintenance hallway, still disoriented from the brief blackout. My breath came in short bursts, shallow and fast, as my hands shook with the cold that wasn't just physical. There was something worse, something deeper, lingering in the air, crawling beneath the surface of this place. The moment I thought I might have imagined the figure, the whisper, it all returned in a single sickening wave. I was alone here. I had to be. I forced my legs to move, one step after another. The air felt thinner, heavier, and I fought the panic creeping up my spine. There was nothing normal about this place anymore. I couldn't trust my senses. The platform felt alive now, like it was waiting for something to happen. The walls seemed to close in as I walked, the metal groaning under some unseen weight. The hum of machinery was now a low growl, an ominous undertone that rattled my teeth. The maintenance room was ahead, but the closer I got, the worse it felt. There was an unfamiliar coldness creeping through the floor, not from the machinery, not from the air conditioning. It was a kind of cold that seeped into your bones, a chill that made you question your own skin. I glanced over my shoulder, but the hallway behind me was empty, just the shadows flickering like they were alive, reaching toward me. The door to the maintenance room creaked open with a soft moan, but it wasn't just the hinges. It was the whole room, like it was sighing, releasing its breath after a long wait. I stepped inside, the fluorescent lights buzzing as if on their last legs. The shelves were lined with tools, spare parts, the odd spare light bulb, but nothing of particular interest. Except the sound. That low, almost imperceptible thump-thump-thump again. It wasn't mechanical. It was something else. Something deep. It was coming from beneath the floor, just below me, somewhere in the bowels of the platform. My feet moved of their own accord as I crouched down, pressing my ear to the cold metal of the floor. I could hear the vibration clearly now. It was rhythmic, like something moving in the depths of the rig. Slowly, methodically, as if whatever was down there was testing the very structure, testing whether it could be free. A deep, instinctive dread swelled in me, but I couldn't stop myself. I reached for the nearest wrench and pried at the floor's edge, fingers trembling, heart pounding against my ribs. Bang! The wrench slipped from my hand and clattered to the floor, but the noise wasn't from the tool. The sound had come from beneath the metal. It was loud, jagged, a clash of something heavy colliding with the structure. The rig groaned under the pressure, as though something was pushing, trying to force its way out. I recoiled, fear twisting in my gut as a cold sweat spread across my forehead. I didn't think. I just ran. I sprinted out of the room and down the hall, back toward the stairs, back toward the control room. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was right behind me. That I wasn't alone. The wind outside had kicked up again, howling through the platform like some untamable beast, and yet the air inside felt thick with something darker. The shadows seemed deeper here, like the corners were growing, stretching, pushing against me. I barely registered the flashing lights overhead, the flickering signs that warned of malfunction, of failure. I reached the control room in a panic, slamming the door behind me and locking it with shaking hands. The screen flickered before me. Static danced across the monitors. I was looking at nothing. The sound of the radio crackling to life sent a shiver down my spine, and I slowly reached for the receiver. The voice came again, but this time it wasn't distant, it wasn't faint. It was clear, commanding. "You shouldn't be here." I dropped the receiver, my heart hammering against my ribs as I backed away from the console. My thoughts swirled. I tried to rationalize. This was impossible. I was alone. This was just a trick, just a glitch, but I could hear the voice in my head now, feel the weight of its presence. It was close. Too close. I stumbled toward the window, gazing out into the inky black of the sea. The waves had calmed again, too perfectly. Not a ripple to be seen, as though the ocean itself had turned still, as though it was watching. The fog was thicker now, swirling beneath the platform in slow-moving tendrils. Something in that mist tugged at my mind, some ancient primal fear I couldn't name. Then I saw it. A figure. Standing in the mist, just outside the reach of the lights. Tall, impossibly tall, its body jagged, like the shadows had been stitched together to form a shape. I couldn't see its face, but I knew it was watching me. There was no mistaking it. The same oppressive presence that had haunted my thoughts for days was now physically standing there, waiting. I couldn't breathe. My mouth was dry, my throat tight. I wanted to scream, but no sound would come. The figure didn't move, didn't speak. It just stood there, a dark silhouette against the fog. Then the radio crackled again, louder this time. The voice whispered, but this time it wasn't a warning. "Get out. Now." I turned away from the window, my legs weak, my mind spinning in a haze of fear. There was no escape. No way off this platform. I was stuck. Alone. And yet, the thing outside wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was knowing that there was something inside the rig with me now. Something that had been waiting, hiding in the walls in the darkness. And it was drawing closer with every breath I took. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to run. I was trapped in this metal coffin, alone with whatever had boarded us, whatever was waiting. But I couldn't stay in the control room forever. I needed to get to the lower levels, to the machinery, to the generators. I needed to figure out what was happening. I had to. I grabbed the flashlight, my hands still trembling as I turned it on, the beam cutting through the dark. I had to move. I had to find answers. The voice, the figure, the banging beneath the rig. They all led somewhere, and I was determined to follow, even if it meant walking straight into the heart of the thing that was hunting me. I stepped back into the hallway, the beam of my flashlight trembling in my hands. Every shadow seemed to grow longer, every creak of metal louder. The very air felt thick with something I couldn't see, but could feel deep inside me. My thoughts were scattered, panic clouding my judgment. I couldn't trust the walls. I couldn't trust the silence. I couldn't trust the ocean. And most of all, I couldn't trust myself. I was no longer sure what was real. What had I seen? What had I heard? Was any of this truly happening? Or had I gone mad? The shadows at the end of the hall seemed to shift, like they were waiting, watching. I couldn't go back. Not now. I had to move forward, one step at a time. But as I walked, I could hear the faintest whisper behind me. It's too late. And I knew, whatever had boarded us, whatever had awakened in this place, was never going to let me leave. The lights above flickered once more, their buzzing amplifying the oppressive silence that hung thick in the air. I barely noticed the sounds of my own breath as I moved down the cold metal corridor. The beam of my flashlight sliced through the shadows, but it felt as though the darkness itself was swallowing the light, dragging it down into an endless void. I couldn't escape it. There was no corner to hide in, no escape to run to. The platform had become a labyrinth, a nightmare, and I was its unwilling guest. My heart beat in my chest like a drum, echoing loudly in my ears. The sense of being followed had become unbearable. Each footstep was louder than the last, each breath heavier, like someone was right behind me, whispering in the dark. I could feel its presence now. It was there in the walls, in the shadows, waiting. The thing outside, the thing that had haunted me from the beginning, was no longer the only threat. Now it was inside the platform. And it was coming for me. I stumbled into the stairwell, the flashlight trembling in my hands as I descended. The air grew colder with each step, the chill pressing into my skin like ice. The light sputtered and went out entirely, plunging me into darkness, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. I had to get to the lower levels. The generators were down there, the heart of the rig. I needed to get them running again, or at least try. I didn't know how, but I had to. I was halfway down when I heard it. A scraping noise. Like metal against metal. Slow, deliberate. The sound echoed through the stairwell, coming from below. My pulse spiked as I froze on the stairs, the flashlight barely illuminating the first few steps ahead of me. My breathing grew shallow, and I dared not move. Not a single sound came from above, but the noise below, the scraping, grew louder. Closer. I couldn't see it. I couldn't see anything. The only thing I could hear was that sound, relentless, dragging itself closer. There was no rational explanation, no way to justify it. The air felt alive, vibrating with some unseen energy, and the walls, they were moving, stretching, growing, as if they were not just part of the platform but part of something else, something ancient, something alive. Then I saw it. The faintest shift in the darkness, a shape moving inhumanly slow, like something scraping along the floor, too large to fit between the walls. It was crawling. I couldn't tell what it was, couldn't make out the details. But the shadows were thick around it, and every instinct in me screamed to run, to get away, to leave this place forever. But my legs wouldn't move. The scraping sound stopped suddenly. There was only silence. Then the voice came again. You shouldn't have come back. It was low, soft, almost a whisper, but it was everywhere. In my mind, in my ears, in my bones. It was in the platform itself, in the air around me. It wasn't just a voice, it was a presence. I could feel it closing in on me. I turned toward the door at the base of the stairs, but the moment my hand touched the handle, it swung open with a violent slam, the sound like thunder in the stillness. I stumbled back, my heart slamming in my chest, my legs giving way. And then it was there. The thing that had been waiting. The thing that had boarded us. It wasn't a single creature, not at first. It was a mass, a writhing, shifting collection of shadows, of limbs, of things that weren't supposed to exist in this world. It crawled impossibly fast, covering the space in a blink. It wasn't made of flesh. It wasn't made of anything. It was just there. Twisted limbs, faces that weren't faces, eyes that didn't blink, that looked through me into something deeper. Its shape was impossible to define, constantly shifting, the edges never clear, just a flood of distorted motion. I could hear it now, not just with my ears, but with my mind, the shrieking of thousands of voices, all calling out in agony, in warning, in dread. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't scream. The creature reached toward me, its limbs stretched impossibly long, its fingers tapering to clawed tips. I tried to move, to run, but my legs were frozen, my body locked in place by some primal terror, some ancient fear that held me still. It was too close now. The thing was on me, its cold, wet presence pressing against my skin. It was not just in front of me. It was inside me, clawing at my mind, trying to drag me into the dark. The whispers, the voices, they surrounded me, growing louder, until they were all I could hear, until they were in my head, tearing at my sanity. "Get out," it whispered. I fought the urge to collapse, to give in, to let it swallow me whole. I closed my eyes, my breath coming in ragged gasps, and for a moment I thought I might pass out from the fear, from the suffocating weight of it all. And then there was a sound. A crack. A single, sharp noise that cut through the madness. It was the rig. The platform. Something had given way. The walls were creaking, groaning, bending under the pressure of the thing that had boarded us. And then, the door at the far end of the room exploded open. I spun toward the sound, my mind barely able to process what was happening. The floodlights outside, the emergency floodlights, flared to life. The harsh white light sliced through the fog, blinding in its intensity, and for a moment the creature recoiled, its tendrils flailing in a violent alien dance. It shrieked. A sound like metal scraping against bone, like 1,000 nails on a chalkboard, but deeper, darker, more primal. The door exploded again. The force of it rattled the platform. The rig was shuddering now, like it was dying, like it was being pulled apart. I realized then, the platform was collapsing. The thing was destroying it, breaking it apart piece by piece. I didn't have much time. I had to move. But my legs felt like lead. I wasn't sure if I could run, if I could escape. The creature turned back toward me, its eyes locking onto mine. And I understood in that moment, with terrifying clarity, it wasn't going to let me go. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. And then I heard the voice again. The one that had been on the radio. The one that had spoken to me from the very beginning. "It's too late." The rig gave one final groan, the whole structure shuddering as if caught in the jaws of something immense. The creature screeched again, its limbs thrashing wildly as it moved toward me. But I didn't run. I couldn't. Instead, I closed my eyes. And in that final moment, before everything was swallowed by the darkness, I understood the truth. I was never meant to leave this place. And neither was the platform. The world around me was still black. No sound. No light. Just a thick, suffocating silence that pressed against my chest. It was all I could hear, all I could feel, the absolute stillness of it. My body ached, but it wasn't pain. It was something deeper, something much worse. I didn't know how long I had been unconscious. Hours? Days. All I knew was that I was no longer on the platform. I opened my eyes, but the darkness didn't recede. It clung to me, thick and all-encompassing, like I was submerged in the void. I could feel the absence of the familiar hum of the machinery, the occasional clatter of tools. There was nothing, just emptiness. The air was heavy, colder than I remembered, and it tasted stale, like it hadn't been breathed in years. The last thing I remembered was the creature, the thing that had boarded us. The sound of the platform creaking under its weight, the flash of lights, the floodlights blinding me just before it all went silent. But now there was nothing. Where was I? I forced my limbs to move, pushing myself upright, my body responding slower than I expected. The floor beneath me felt uneven, rough. My feet slid as I tried to stand, and I reached out, instinctively gripping the nearest surface for balance. The cold metal against my fingers was a fleeting comfort, but it didn't last. I didn't know where I was, but this didn't feel like the platform. I could sense something, a faint pressure against my mind. Not something I could hear, not something I could see, but something I could feel, like a weight pressing down on my chest. It wasn't the creature. It was something else. Something had changed. I looked around. It was still dark, but now I could make out the faintest shapes in the distance. Shadows, moving shapes. I could see a sliver of light ahead, a weak yellow glow that flickered like an old candle. With a shuddering breath, I forced myself forward, one step at a time. As I moved, I noticed the air didn't feel quite right. It was wrong. The heaviness in my chest intensified, and I realized something that I hadn't quite grasped before. There was no sound. Not the wind, not the sea, not the creak of the platform. Only my own footsteps, loud and distorted, like they were echoing from somewhere far off, like I wasn't the only one walking here. I reached the light. It was coming from a door, a small rusted steel door at the end of the hallway. The glow was sickly, unnatural. Too yellow, too dim. My heartbeat quickened. I reached for the handle, my hand trembling, and pushed the door open. The hinges groaned in protest, the sound sharp in the otherwise silent space. Beyond the door there was no platform, no ocean, no machines, just an endless, decaying hallway. The walls were cracked, covered in what I could only describe as some kind of mold, a thick, pulsing mass that seemed to breathe with every passing second. The air was rank with rot, with decay. I stepped through the door and into the corridor, the space stretching out before me. The lights flickered overhead, casting eerie, stuttering glows that barely illuminated the path ahead. This was no rig. It couldn't be. The walls weren't made of steel. They were soft, like flesh, like they were alive. The whole space seemed to pulse, to breathe with each step I took. I couldn't stop myself. My feet moved on their own, pulling me deeper into the space. I couldn't remember why I was here. I couldn't remember how I got here. But something was guiding me, pulling me forward. I walked for what felt like hours, my eyes wide but seeing nothing but endless darkness punctuated by brief, flickering lights. The walls seemed to shift with me, like they were never quite the same, never quite settled. There were no doors, no windows, no exits. Just the hallway stretching on and on. It was suffocating. Finally, I reached another door. It was smaller, barely more than a crack, but there was light leaking through, a weak, sickly light that made my stomach turn. I reached for it, my fingers numb, the tremble still there, but it felt as though something was urging me on. As if the door held the answers to everything. The moment my hand touched the handle, I felt it, a jolt of energy, a surge through my body, and the door swung open violently. Inside was nothing but darkness. A room. A void. I couldn't tell. The air in the room was thick, dense. My lungs felt like they were being crushed. Then a whisper. Soft. Low. Broken. You were never meant to leave. I flinched. It was the voice. The same voice that had spoken to me on the radio. The same voice I had heard in the depths of the platform. But now it was different. It was real. Not just an echo in my mind, but a presence that pressed against me, pushing me down, forcing me to listen. The shadows in the room moved, shifting and bending in ways they shouldn't. They were alive, growing, and something began to form in the middle of the darkness. Something I couldn't quite comprehend. The shapes swirled around the room, converging on one point, and the voice came again, this time clearer, louder, almost triumphant. You can't escape. You belong to us now. I stepped back, my body shaking, my mind unraveling as the shadows grew thicker, as though they were folding around me, enclosing me in their grip. And then I realized what it was. I wasn't just trapped here, I was being erased. This was not just a nightmare, not just an illusion. This was real. The rig had never been a place of isolation. It had been the beginning of something much worse, something that had waited. The platform wasn't just a structure. It was a vessel, a prison, a gateway. And I had opened it. I turned, my legs weak beneath me, but there was no way back. No escape. No exit. The door I had come through was gone, and in its place stood a wall of twisting shadows. The flickering light from the hall had vanished, leaving only the endless dark. And then I heard it. The thing from the platform. The thing that had boarded us. It wasn't outside anymore. It was inside, breathing down my neck, its presence like a weight on my chest. But it wasn't just the thing, it was the whole rig. The platform. The ocean. Everything had been pulled into this. This place, this horrible, suffocating reality. I had brought it here. I had opened the door. I had let it in. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. My body refused to respond. And all I could do was listen to the voice as it grew louder, more desperate, more insistent. You can't escape. You belong to us now. The shadows wrapped around me. My breath faltered as the blackness consumed everything. and the last thing I heard was the echo of the voice in my mind. And then the darkness swallowed me whole. When I woke again, there was no more rig, no more platform, no more ocean. There was nothing, just an endless, suffocating void. My skin felt raw, like it had been scraped clean. My mind, shattered and broken, no longer understood what it had known before. I was here, wherever here was, and I would never leave. Because the thing had boarded us. And it had taken me.